if that was their response, I think, I mean, you know, we all laugh when we hear that because it sounds so far from accurate. And it would have really ruined the story of what was about to happen. Now, I have a lot of people talk to me, and a lot of them will tell me, they'll say this statement: I just wish I had the life that you had. And what they mean when they say that is, everything goes good in my life. Everything is fine in my life. I don't struggle with anything. I've never had any problems in my life. I just have a pretty darn good life. With that being said, I want to preface by saying I am unquestionably blessed beyond measure. Unquestionably blessed beyond measure. I have no complaint in the world. I live in one of the richest countries in the world. I eat 3 meals every single day of my life. That puts me in the top 2% of wealthiest people on the planet. Meaning that if you eat food every single day, you're in the top 2% wealthiest people on the planet. If you eat 3 square meals. So, with that being said, I also want to clarify, I have not had some perfect, dreamy, nothing's gone wrong ever life. Now, also to be clear, I recognize that there's a lot of people who have had way worse lives than I have. Even in America, that have had way worse lives than I have. But there's a whole lot of people in America that have had way better lives than I have. And, you know, one of the things that I face on a daily, I'm not exaggerating when I say daily basis, that most of everybody I've ever met has never experienced, is persecution. Now, again, I understand I'm not trying to over dramatize things. I've never been beaten. I've never been imprisoned for my faith. I have never been legally shut down from speaking about my faith. Closest I ever got was I got banned from TikTok. But that's like the worst that it's ever been for me. So with that context though, in regards to verbal attacks that I've gotten, I get one, as I said, multiple a day, literally a day, because I'm a Christian, and if I was not a Christian, I would not get those. Not to mention, I've had some really rough stuff happen in my life, and I'm not here to just go through the hell that I've gone through to compare it to the hell that you've gone through and see who's gone through more hell. But my point in saying all of that is to say, the stuff that I have gone through is almost never seen in me ever when you look at me or when you speak to me. You know, I think it's easy for people to get I'll put it this way. I'm certain that many people put on this Christian facade when they get in front of a camera so that they can show off for you, sound more eloquent, maybe, you know, dress better, something like. I'm in my car getting aluminum foil for my wife right now. I've been dressed like this all day. I'm in swimming trunks and a shirt and a hat. Like, I didn't do anything special for the video. I talk to you the same way that I talk to my wife and my son. I'm not acting any different because I'm on camera. I just want to, like, let you have access to my life and what the Lord's doing in my life. And I'm always like what you are seeing right now. I don't ever change. I don't go into any mode. I don't go into work mode. I don't go into parent mode, family mode, husband mode, nothing. Nothing ever changes. I'm very consistent in those things for the most part. And when somebody wants to say to me that they have experienced something and they just have a whole different life, different attitude, different emotions, different feelings, different way that they treat people, different way they talk to people, different manners, a whole 9 yards. It's very confusing to me because I'm going to be honest with you. In the midst of going through a whole lot of stuff that most people have never experienced and never will have to experience, I never change who I am and I never change how I act. And the reason for that is because Scripture commands us to not change when we're in the midst of trials and tribulations, right? Stuff's gonna happen in life. That's a promise. God never promised that you're gonna have, you know, sunshine and roses all the time in your life. But with that being said, I want to clarify that in the midst of that, you don't have to change. Your circumstances can change, but you don't have to change. I want to paint a picture here. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the Old Testament, in the book of Daniel, chapter, I believe it's 3, talks about this story of not bowing down to the idol that King Nebuchadnezzar had created for them. And they surprisingly submitted to authority on every front that they were told to. Only exceptions were their diet, as well as them not bowing down to another idol. So, you know, they eat kosher. That's just part of Jewish law. So Jews eat a certain way, and they were offered to eat certain things. And it's funny because when people tell me that they're going to go on a Daniel fast, a Daniel fast is literally them just eating by Jewish law. They were just, you know, there's things like pork that were offered, and they refused to eat it because they didn't eat pork. But in the midst of that, everything else they obeyed that the government told them to do, which is really interesting to compare to today times. I'll just leave that there. I'm not going to make this whole video about politics, but with all of that said, King Nebuchadnezzar said, I'll give you one more chance, bow down to my God, or you're getting thrown into the furnace. And they said, we will not bow down to your God. My God will save me from the fire, but even if he doesn't, I still won't bow down. And that boldness and confidence in the Lord infuriated Nebuchadnezzar to the point where he turned it up 7 times hotter than it was. Guards died, and they ended up going into the fire. What would you think if in that moment, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they flipped their lid? They just went off on Nebuchadnezzar. King Nebuchadnezzar, you don't know who you are. I've worked for you in this palace for X amount of years, and I've done my job exactly how I was supposed to. I submitted on things that I would have never submitted on if I wasn't under your reign, and I've done everything right, and just because I won't bow down to your God means that you're going to throw me in the fire. I've had enough of you. I tell you what, I'm about to go off. If that was their response, we all laugh when we hear that because it sounds so far from accurate. And it would have really ruined the story of what was about to happen next, right? If you don't know the story, what happens next is they're thrown into the fire, and there's another in the fire with them. There's a 4th person in the fire after Nebuchadnezzar only threw in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they didn't know what was going on. They were freaked out. And when they came out of the fire, there wasn't even the scent of fire on them when they got back out of the fire. And this beautiful spiritual picture there is, first off, Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, they never prayed that the fire would go out. They just prayed that God would be with them in the midst of the fire that they were going through, which is super applicable to your life. First off, are you just praying that everything goes right in your life? Like, my buddy Dan Muller, he always says, like, are you praying for every light in your drive to work to turn green so that you don't have to be in a bunch of traffic? Because every time that you pray for a green light, you just ask somebody else's light to be red. Like, how self-centered is that? You know what I mean? And that's just like a silly example. But the point still remains is we as Christians aren't supposed to be, firefighters, spiritual firefighters trying to put out every fire in our life, but rather just thank God that he's with us in the midst of each fire that we're going through. And their actions, emotions, feelings, nothing changed in the midst of the fire. They stood firm on what they were, who they were, because the important thing here is their identity never changed. Their identity never changed in the midst of what was going on. Their identity never changed. Are you and your spouse going through crap right now, or boyfriend or girlfriend? Are you changed? Because you shouldn't be. Because Jesus never changed. Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego didn't change. Their circumstances changed, but their identity didn't change. So why do you go from acting like a son or a daughter, or a son, a co-heir of Christ, a born-again believer, to acting in the flesh just because something didn't go well? It's a very entitled version of Christianity. And I get that this is not an easy concept to grasp. But we as Christians should be in such a place where our joy is fixed on what Christ did for us. I hear people all the time say, I don't get how Jesus offers a joy unspeakable when I sometimes am doing good and sometimes I'm not. Well, yeah, the issue is that you're trying to find how you're doing and how it's going. If you're doing as well as your circumstances are going, and you're just as joyful as your job is going, and just as joyful as your spouse is treating you, that's not joy. That's called happiness, and it's temporal, and it's going to always leave you very disappointed. But if your joy is found in what Christ did for you, nothing that anybody can ever do can ever change that, because they can't take away something that they never gave you. Jesus gave you the joy, so how could somebody else steal that away? They're not Jesus. Why is somebody being Lord over your life? You're letting somebody else be Lord over your life more than Jesus is. It's a huge mistake Christians make all the time. And the thing that I believe is made to keep us in the right space mentally with that is, there's a passage of scripture in Hebrews 12. I just actually got this like massive poster, picture printed out of this. And it says, let us lay aside every sin and encumbrance which so easily entangles us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and sat down at the right hand of God. Consider him who endured such hostility by sinners against himself, so that you do not grow weary. It's biblically inaccurate. It's sin biblically to be weary, to be discouraged. Discouraged Christians are unbiblical. When you're in a moment where you're so upset with your spouse, you're so upset with your friend because they said or did whatever, when you're so upset with your job or whatever else it might be, I want you to take a breath for a second, close your eyes, and think about what you put Jesus through. And when you can think about what you just put Jesus through because of your sin and what you've put other people through, and we think about a sinless man who went to the cross for something that only sinful men did, and that is our perspective in regards to the circumstance that we're in that moment, it's very difficult for us to be that upset with the person to our left and our right. In that moment, you go back from upset about the people around you to so thankful for who God is and what God has done, because fulfilling the perfect will of God in your life is this: that you'd be praying without ceasing, rejoicing always, and thankful in all circumstances. That's fulfilling the perfect will of God in your life. You want to stop all the emotional distress, a lot of the anxiety and depression that you go through. 90+% of this is scientific, guys. I didn't make up this number. This is scientific. It's 80 to 90% of all anxiety and depression is self-induced by your perception of reality. How you perceive what you're going through is 80 to 90% of why anxiety and depression exists today. You put it on yourself the majority of the time. Now, I'm not, again, there's a percentage of people who genuinely have a medical disorder, a mental imbalance, chemical imbalance in their brain. I am not mocking, ridiculing, or minimalizing that at all. That's a serious thing and it needs to be taken way more serious than it's taken today. Actually, I get really upset with how unseriously it's taken. But most people who go through anxiety and depression in their life, they put themselves through it because simply, in its simplest forms, and I'm not oversimplifying either, you're not thankful for what God's doing in your life. If you can make that little pivot in your mind right there, changes everything about your life. Hopefully it's a blessing to you guys. It blessed and rocked me and transformed my life when I saw it. And I really appreciate you guys. So if that blessed you, I ask you to subscribe. If it didn't, unsubscribe. I want you to unsubscribe. No, I'm just kidding. I guess you can if you want to. But anyways, I appreciate it. Chat with you guys in the next one.